Welcome to episode 174 of the Fully In It podcast. It's hard to believe, but I have been a mom for nearly 14 years now. It feels like just yesterday I gave birth to my oldest, and here I am about to have my fourth. I always wondered what it would be like to be a more seasoned mother, and here I am. Although I also know I still have so much to learn and grow in. In this episode, I wanted to share some of my favorite tips and takeaways from 14 years of motherhood and what truly matters on this journey. You ready? Let's go ahead and dive right in. Welcome to the Fully In It podcast with Kate Saffel, a show for powerful moms growing life-changing businesses while showing up intentionally for their families. I teach you how to create a family-first and profitable business in less time by leveraging simple strategy, mom life-friendly systems, and above all, the mindset of going fully in it. You ready? When I was outlining this episode, I really had to narrow down the tips I wanted to offer. And I had to think too about, well, what kind of tips do I want to offer? Because when it comes to motherhood, the role that we carry encompasses multiple areas of life, right? It includes time management and taking care of a home and parenting and identity. There's so much to it that, this could be an entire course of tips, but I just really wanted to get to the heart of what I have found on this motherhood journey to be most important, at least to me. And my goal in sharing this is to hopefully just ease up some of the pressure you may be feeling as a mother, to give you some new ways of looking at the overwhelm and the journey so that you can feel more presence right now in whatever season of motherhood that you're in. And these are really timeless tips. I think that these are tips that will work whether you are considering becoming a mom or you are a grandmother. These are ones that will always be relevant regardless of the season of life that you are in. So these are not in any particular order, but I hope that they serve you. And let's go ahead and jump into the first one. My first tip is don't sweat the messes. And this is going to make a lot more sense here in a moment before you think that I am recommending that you have a messy home or that you just ignore the chaos. Before I became a mom, I had a very tidy and orderly home, and it was easy to do. I mean, at the time, Kirk and I were in grad school. I was working, he was working. We were rarely home. And so our house stayed nice and tidy all day, every day. And then what ends up happening is you have a family and you add more people, and consequently the messes multiply. Now, early on in my motherhood journey, there were many years where I felt like I had to clean the entire house before I could do anything, before we could go to the park, before I could read a book I wanted to read, before I would allow myself to sit down and do some creative writing. I would always put the house before the living. And it makes sense, right? Because, when we look around our home environment, it can be very overwhelming to see messes, to see dirty dishes in the sink, to see the laundry pile, that there's dust bunnies floating along the floor. And your mind, if it's anything like mine, would say, oh, just take care of it now. This looks bad. Let's not leave the messes. And I did that for many years. And what it created was a lot of burnout and feeling resentful and frustrated. But bigger than that was that it kept me from actually living my life and enjoying my family. Because when all of your attention is on the messes, and we both know that the messes never end, it keeps you in a chronic cycle of cleaning, of always trying to improve your environment. And it's like that carrot in front of you that you're chasing, and it's never going to stop. You're never going to catch up with it. There will always be another meal that creates dirty dishes. There will always be clothes that need to be washed. There will be shoes left strewn about the house because everybody decided to take them off in a different room. Like, these things are inevitable as a mother. And so you really have to ask yourself, and this was the question I asked myself, was, do I want to spend my life cleaning my house? Or do I want to do something more? And truly, that was what really, that was one of the inspirations behind us traveling full time. I was like, I just want to live in a simpler environment, and it did create that when we were living in our travel trailer and we were traveling around the US. It can only get so messy because it's so small and we owned so few things. So that was why minimalism was always very appealing to me, because in my mind, I thought, well, the less stuff we own, the less there is to clean. And that is very true. So if I could go back and tell my former self anything, I would just say, don't sweat the messes, Kate. Obviously, don't let your home become just complete uncontrolled chaos. But at the same time, it's okay to leave the dirty dishes in the sink when you get invited to a play date unexpectedly. It's okay to walk out the door and the beds not be made. It's okay to just sit down and play the board game, even though the living room is a mess. And ultimately, the only person who's going to give you permission to do that is you. You have to be the one to tell yourself it is okay to ignore the messes just for a little bit. And that leads me into my second tip, which these might seem contradictory, but stick with me. My second tip or takeaway is that it's easier to keep your home mostly clean than having to do big, huge cleanups. So for me, part of what created that pattern was that I would let things get a bit out of hand, and then I would panic, and then I would spend like an entire day cleaning. And it was a kind of a yo-yo cycle. And it also was based on me having these unrealistic standards around how I thought my home should look, right? So my bar was really high. So like I mentioned in the first tip, I lowered my bar just a little bit to account for the fact that I had a family now, and family life is always going to be moving and making messes and all of the things. But then also learning how to keep the home tidy enough, not spotless, not perfect, but tidy enough so that you don't have to do these big, huge cleanups that, cause everyone to freak out. It's just so much easier if you have some rhythms and routines when it comes to maintaining your home. You have things that you do at certain times of day, like emptying the dishwasher when you wake up in the morning and making sure that you load it after every meal, that you sweep periodically throughout the day. And especially if you have older kids like I do, that you start handing out some of these tasks to them. We very much have a teamwork mentality when it comes to maintaining our home, especially now that I have a 7-year-old, he's going to be 8 later this spring, an 11-year-old, and then my oldest will be 14 in March. So, now that I have older kids, they are part of the team, and there are expectations on them around what tasks they're responsible for doing in the home on a daily basis. Now, when my kids were little, that was a little bit trickier, but at the same time, I found some aspects of that easier because I could put them down for naps, and then I could, tidy up the home and get things reset for our evening routine. Now that my kids are older, they're obviously not napping. Our home life goes all day long, especially as a homeschool family. Like there's really no breaks. And so that requires just a different approach. I think ultimately my encouragement for you is to find the homemaking and cleaning rhythm that works best for your family. There are going to be so many examples online of ways that you could do it. And I would really be cautious about comparing yourself to other people and find what works for your home. But this may really require you to experiment. My third tip, my big takeaway, is to remember that the time is now. The time is now. The time is not in the past. The time is not in the future. The time is right now in this moment. And I know that that probably sounds very like philosophical, but here's the thing is that we can spend a lot of our mental energy thinking about what could have been or what should be instead of just being here right now, present to the moment. And I know this is a big struggle for moms because it was a big struggle of mine. I would spend so much time ruminating around mistakes I thought I had made, how I thought I could have done something better, or I would be living for the future, living for what I wanted to happen, always thinking the grass was going to be greener when we got to this new milestone or this new way of living or this new change that we were pursuing. And consequently, it would take me out of the moment. Now, here's the thing you have to know. The present moment is not flashy. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that your brain will attach to things that happened in the past or things that you hope will happen in the future, because your brain loves to add storytelling. But in the moment, you're getting the realness of what life is really like for you. And your children will most likely not remember the big flashy moments. I mean, they may remember that epic trip that you took or the day you went to Disney World. But for the most part, they will remember those random in-between moments that you didn't give a second thought to, that you weren't focused on. And that's really, really clarifying for us as mothers that we don't always have to be in a constant state of pursuit of better or more, because often what's happening right now with our kids in front of us is the moment. It is what they want, but it won't be as meaningful to them if you aren't mentally with them. If you're distracted, if you're on your phone, if you're researching things, if you're just, your body's there, but the lights aren't on and nobody's home, right? Your kids can sense that and feel that. And so my encouragement for you today and every day is to pause, take a deep breath, look deeply into your child's eyes, and be in this moment with them right now. Because then it's gone. It's gone, and it joins a bank of other memories. And we get to enjoy those in the future. Like I love now, I'm gonna sound like an old lady, but I love just sometimes like going through the memory reel in my mind when I'm like laying in bed at night, thinking back to when my kids were little. But what would be even better than that is if I just had been more present when I was with them. So there's no shame to this. There's no guilt. It's an invitation. It's an invitation, and it's not an easy one. And I know this firsthand. It's not easy because there will always be so many things screaming for your attention, right? Like the kitchen needing to be cleaned up, calling the doctor, paying the bill, hurrying off to dance lessons, getting dinner started. There's always something to do. But the most important thing you can do is practice that presence with your children and remember that the time truly is right now. The next takeaway that I wanted to share, number 4, is that you know more than enough right now. You know more than enough. This was a hard one for me in the beginning of my motherhood journey of thinking, I need to look outside myself. I need to ask the experts. I need to read the books. I need to research. That's very much my personality. And it meant I was outsourcing my motherhood instead of recognizing that God innately gave me and gives you many of the skills, the wisdom, the knowledge that you need to mother your children, your specific children that were either born to you, that you adopted, that you're fostering. Like these children were entrusted to you for a reason. And so it's tempting to downplay your own knowledge because you may think like, well, I haven't been a mom long enough. I don't know enough. I'm not so-and-so. Maybe you have a role model in your life that made it look so effortless and you wonder, why is it so hard for me? But if you could keep coming back to this truth that you know more than enough right now, It will ground you in your own wisdom and to trust yourself as the parent of your child. At the same time, my tip number 5 very much goes with number 4, and it is to ask for forgiveness and model imperfection. These go hand in hand, right? Like, you know more than enough right now, and you are going to make mistakes. This is inevitable in motherhood. And one of the most important things I've learned as a mother is how much it means to my children when I ask for their forgiveness. And I model and I communicate to them about how I am not perfect. And it'll look something like, maybe I flew off the handle and I yelled at one of my kids and they did not deserve it. And even if they did, quote unquote, deserve it, like, they don't need a parent yelling at them, right? I could have handled it differently. I could have been calmer. There's so many different ways to parent, and it just happens sometimes. I'm an imperfect human being, and I just sometimes will yell at my kids. And so if I did that, I would maybe take some time to cool down, right? Catch my breath. And then I would go to my child and I would ask for their forgiveness. And I would say, hey, I'm so sorry I yelled at you. I shouldn't have. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. Would you be willing to forgive me? And it's just a really beautiful way to open up that dialogue around forgiveness. Because as humans, it's something we're going to be doing our entire life. Our children will be doing their entire life. But I don't want my kids to grow up with the belief that somehow their mom is perfect. I'm not. Farthest thing from it. And I think that there's something in accepting that we are not perfect, that no human is. It actually gives us freedom to accept who we truly are. And that's okay. But your kids won't know that if you don't tell them and if you don't model it for them. My number 6 tip or takeaway is to always remember that your values are for sale. Your values are for sale to the highest bidder. And let me explain what I mean. There are certain truths, principles that I know you hold dear within your family that are meaningful to you and your crew. But so often we lose sight of our values and actually implementing and practicing them because we sell out to the highest bidder. That means someone asking you to do something you don't want to do, but you're afraid to say no. Or you buying things that you don't actually need. You selling your time, your energy, and your money. And it taking you out of your values and sometimes even in the opposite direction of them. Living in your values in this modern day and age is not easy, especially if your values are contradictory to what the current narrative is around how family life should be done. I have experienced that for many, many years because as a family, we've really swam upstream and we've done things differently than most people do. I do think that there's been a bit more cultural acceptance around that in the last few years. I think the pandemic and COVID really shook some things up and showed that there were more than one way to do family life. And so I am appreciative of that. That is a silver lining. At the same time, nobody is going to guard your values except for you. They're not. They're in it for their own values, for their own needs, their own priorities. So you really have to protect what matters most to you. You have to be willing to say no more often than you say yes. You have to remember that your time is a precious commodity and you can't make more of it. And every time you spend money, you are trading your life energy for an object, for a thing. There's a really great book about this. Oh, what is it called? Your Money or Your Life, I think. And that just popped in my mind. I'm not sure if that's the exact title, but I bet you could search it and you would find the book I'm talking about. And it just talks about how much you have to work to pay for the things that you buy and bringing more awareness around the price and if you're actually willing to pay that. And hey, this counts for you whether or not you actually work. If you're in a home and you have a husband or a partner who is primarily paying the bills, you're still trading their energy and their time away. And so getting clear on your values, being so clear on what matters most to you as a family, will then allow you to put up the boundaries around what you will do in order to protect and live that legacy out with your family. The final takeaway I have, the takeaway that has inspired this podcast, inspired my coaching practice, has led me to make so many internal changes within myself and external changes within my home. This is really the foundation of it all. Your children do not need a perfect mom. They need a happy one. And what I mean by happy is that you actually want to be there and you actually want to be their mother and you're grateful for it. It's so easy when life is busy and it's hard and it's complicated and there's challenges and it feels like the day goes on forever, to focus on the negative, to focus on the hardship, to focus your attention on the things that you don't want instead of what you do. And for me personally, this was a big part of my growth journey, was overcoming my negative mindset and becoming a happier mother. And happier, when I say happier, I don't mean like superficial happy. I don't mean like, look, I got a new car and that made me happy. I mean like satisfied, like deeply satisfied with your life, with your home, with your family, exactly as it is right now. And it doesn't have to change for you to be able to feel happier. But for me, I had to let go of a lot of my perfectionist tendencies because they were a barrier to me being happy and present to my home life. It's a lie that you need to be better as a mother. And, social media, the online world, television, movies, all of that will sell you this idea that the perfect mom is the best mom. The mom who remembers to bring the perfectly made cupcakes to their kids' school, to check all the boxes, who dresses nice, who works out, right? All of these metrics that we try to measure a mother by, they actually do not matter. I promise you, when your kids get older, they're not going to look back and they'll be like, oh, Mom, thank you so much that you did your hair and makeup every day. Like, they're not going to care. They're going to just remember, were you super unhappy? Were you miserable being their mom? Or did you have a smile on your face? Did love radiate out from you? Did they genuinely feel like you wanted to be there with them? That's what matters most. And my encouragement for you is that if this is like really hitting home and you're like, oof, like maybe you're just feeling it right now, the best thing you can do is get some support. That's what did it for me. I did some therapy and it helped a little bit, but honestly, what helped me the most was hiring a life coach, truly. And there are some wonderful motherhood coaches. I don't do so much of that anymore because I've been doing primarily the business coaching, although I did... I had to stop myself earlier this week because I was like, Kate, you're about to have a baby. But I was like, gosh, we need like a community for mothers. Like we need a space for moms to connect and practice some of these principles. And who knows, maybe I will create it at some point later this year and I will let you know. But in the meantime, if you do feel called to this, there are some wonderful coaches. I'm happy to recommend some to you. That was the game changer for me. That is what helped me to shift, ultimately taking responsibility for my behavior and my thoughts and how I felt, and realizing that I could actually shift how I felt on a daily basis. I didn't have to go into my default of negativity overwhelm, resentment, anger, frustration, right? Like all of those emotions, they're so heavy and they trick you into thinking that your problems are bigger than they actually are. Because if you pause moment to moment, day to day, and you look around you, you will see your needs are being met. Your kids' needs are being met. And what if you could just feel so much gratitude and happiness for that right now? And the more that you practice that, the easier it gets. For me, at first it was hard. I felt like I don't want to be appreciative because I don't have this thing that I want, or my home doesn't look like how I want, or I don't have the money I want to spend on the things that I want to buy. I had to move past that, and I hate to say this, but I had to grow up. I had to grow up and realize that there's more to life than the externals, and that being a mother is the greatest gift I couldn't even have ever imagined that I would receive. And it doesn't take much to tap into that happiness. And like my business name is, to be happier in motherhood. So as I get ready to welcome in my fourth baby any day now, I am holding all of these truths deeply. I am remembering that when I have a new baby, it can be challenging. I'm going to have to learn how to balance things again. I'm going to have to learn how to keep the home clean with 4 kids, including a newborn. It's probably going to get hard. And there's going to be a part of me that's going to want to focus on the past over the future. That's going to want to focus on the challenges instead of the gratitude. That is going to want to think I should be more perfect than I am, or that my house should be cleaner, or that I don't know enough of how to do this and I need to look outside myself. But the reality is these 7 lessons I shared with you are going to be my touchstones over this next year and beyond. And I pray that they're so supportive for you too. Okay, so we are at the end of this episode. I am going to be on my maternity leave for the next 8 or so weeks, but I have podcast episodes scheduled for you and they are all brand new. I hope that you love them. I also have I have written an email to go out weekly the entire time I'm going to be gone with just different wisdom and tips and things that I think will be supportive to you in home, motherhood, and business. So if you're not on my email list, or maybe you were and you got off and you want to get back on, that's totally cool. If you look in the podcast app in which you're listening to this episode, you're going to see a link to sign up and join my newsletter. And I would just be so honored if you connected with me there, because that's going to be the main space I'm going to be, especially if you listen to episode 173 and I'm not going to be on social media. Thank you so much for being here, being part of my community. This podcast is almost 7 years old. I started this halfway through my motherhood journey, and it really is like a record of the ways I've learned and I've grown over the years. And so if it encourages you, you can always go back to the beginning and you'll see when I was figuring all of this out. Okay. I hope that you are doing amazing. Take care, and I will see you on the next episode.